Hi, this is John from SuperSteer, and today we're going to show you how to install an SS175 idler support as well as the Cognito idler and pitman arm brace kit. And these two parts combined will really tighten up the steering and take some play out of it. Okay, we'll start by removing this front splash shield. Okay, now that we have the cover removed, we're going to remove the big nut off the bottom of the steering gear. Next, we'll remove the nut off the bottom of the idler support. Okay, now that we have this nut loose on the bottom of the idler support, you'll notice that we can't get it all the way off because of the clearance between the cross member. So we're just going to leave that for right now, and we're going to go ahead and break this taper loose on the idler arm. Our next step is to remove the small nut from the pitman arm as well as the idler arm. Okay, next we'll remove the two mounting bolts that hold the idler support to the frame. Now that we have our bolts loose, let's go ahead and remove the idler support. Here's a comparison between our idler support that we're going to be installing versus the original equipment idler. Our idler support is much larger, and we also use the tapered roller bearings instead of just a bushing. So now we're just going to loosely set our idler support in place. You'll notice that there's two different colored nuts for the support kit. One is gold, which is a coarse metric thread, and one is silver for a fine thread. So you want to make sure that you have the correct nut for the type of thread that you have on your idler and pitman arm. Next, we want to go ahead and apply some Loctite to all of our threaded parts, as well as our original steering gear sector shaft nut and the idler support nut as well. Okay, next we'll go ahead and thread our two jam nuts on the rod ends all the way down to the bottom, just loosely. You'll notice that we have two different brackets here. The one with the larger hole goes on the steering gear box, and we'll go ahead and install our rod end into the end of this bracket, into the small hole. Okay, next we'll go ahead and install the rod end loosely into our idler bracket. Okay, now while we still have the idler support loose, we're going to go ahead and install our Cognito brace kit. So we'll slip that over the end of that idler support shaft and install the lock washer and nut. Now that we have our idler support bracket loosely in place, we're going to go ahead and install the lock washer and then our gold colored nuts that we've determined fit this thread, and we're just going to loosely install that for the moment. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and install our pitman arm bracket. Now, just like the other side, we're going to go ahead and put our lock washer on, use our correct nut for the thread pitch, and we'll just loosely install that for now. Now that we've snugged up the bolts on all of our brackets, I'm going to go ahead and drop the idler support down and install our two new mounting bolts. These are provided in the kit. You should have a washer on each side of the bolt with a self-locking nut. Okay, now we can go ahead and tighten up our idler support mounting bolts. Final torque on these bolts should be about 85 to 100 foot-pounds. Okay, next we want to tighten these jam nuts up evenly so we don't pull our stud on our arms out of place. We want to keep them nice and straight. These should be roughly 60 foot-pounds. And we'll tighten up the idler side as well, making sure we keep our heim jointed ends straight as well as our stud straight. Okay, now that we have these nuts tight, we want to make sure that the end of our rod end is coming out through the end of the nut, which it is. And next we'll torque the shank nuts to 60 foot-pounds, and this is very critical that you torque them. And we'll torque the idler side as well to 60 foot-pounds. Okay, now we can go ahead and tighten up our bottom nut here on the idler support, and we want this to be about 85 to 100 foot-pounds. And now we can go ahead and tighten up our nut on the bottom of the steering gear. It should be about 120 foot-pounds. Here's a final shot of the brace kit installed on the idler arm side. Remember to use Loctite and torque all your fasteners properly. And this is the final shot of the pitman arm bracket installed. All we have left now is to reinstall the splash guard and get the alignment reset. This is John, SuperSteer. Thank you for your time today.